All right, so in this video, in this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to paint the 5 circles and the box. We are going to be painting them at the same time because if I try and paint this and this at the same time, well, we have wet into wet and it's going to blend together, which is what we don't want. So I'm going to start with the top of this box and then I'm going to move into the circles while the top dries. Now, the thing about watercolor paper is it is meant to be a very light paint. Our goal is not to make a completely pitch black area or pitch or dark purple area. And I'm going to go ahead and use purple as my example just to show you. So my purple is right here. I'm going to limit the amount of water that gets into this paint container. I've just dipped my paintbrush in that. I'm going to dip it back into the water just to make sure I don't have too much. And I can see that some of it came off my brush. And so I'm going to go ahead and test this on my paper and see. Oh, it is light, and I like that. It's so light that you can barely even tell that there's any purple in it, but I can see a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and just continue painting. And as I'm painting, sometimes turning the paper is going to help me to keep the brush inside the shape or the area that I'm working on. So feel free to do that as well. Can you guys see that on there? Okay. So it is very light, and that's exactly what I want. Now, while I have that light value, I'm going to go ahead and paint this circle. And again, I'm going to turn the paper just to make sure that I stay inside the circle area. All right. Now, I'm going to move on to the next one. So I'm going to dip my paintbrush just a little bit into the paint. I'm just going to touch it twice, put a little bit of water on. And again, I can see that the water has, or the paintbrush had some, it came off. So I'm going to go ahead and paint my second circle. It is darker, isn't it? All right, so that is what I want. Now I will tell you this paper is not meant to really be painted on. It's regular copy paper. It is good enough for us to do some practicing, some learning, some testing colors and paints, but we wouldn't necessarily want to do a really good painting on it. So if you end up going too wet, you're going to get like splotches. Mine so far, I haven't gotten it too wet, but sometimes I've done it where you can actually see the table through it. So it is a matter of controlling the water and the paint. I'm going to go ahead with my next one here. I'm going to dip it again. Just a little bit of water, a little bit of paint. I'll go a little bit darker. Now see how that one's a little wetter? All right. It's to the point where I'm a little uncomfortable because my water is starting to kind of move around. So I'm going to dab some of the water off of my paintbrush, and I'm going to use my paintbrush as a sponge. See how that actually lightened it? So you can use your paintbrush as a sponge to collect some. If I really get this too wet, I can take my paper towel and I can dab it on the paper also. You don't want to scrub, but you can certainly dab. Now, is that circle darker? No, I don't think it is. So I'm going to go ahead with just a little more paint in my paintbrush and see if I can make, well, yeah, that's definitely darker. Okay, that's almost too dark. Yeah, so I'm going to take a little bit off of my paintbrush, and while it's still wet, I'm going to spread it around. So I lightened it up and I took some water off so that I get this darker value. Darker? Yeah. In fact, that is about what I want for this too. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this part of my rectangle. Now again, I want to make sure I stay within the lines here. So I'm just going to use the tip of my brush to go along the edge of this, and then I'm going to fill it in a sense. I want to keep this fairly even. So as I'm painting, I'm saying, hey, I'm losing some of the paint, so I'm going to take just a tiny bit more in my paintbrush. When we get to actually watercolor paper, we have a little more freedom of moving paint around. With this one, not so much. All right, so not bad. I think it could be a little darker along the edge, a little more even along the edge here, so I'm going to neaten that up just in a little bit here. All right, so I'm moving on to this one. I have this drying. I'm going to move on to my next one, which means I have more paint and just a little bit of water. So as I get into this, again, there's quite a bit of water and paint, but I also want this to be a darker one. So I'm going to just keep going. I'm going to spread it around. I'm going to even it out, and I'm going to say, okay, is that darker than that? Oh, you guys are so nice. I would say no, I think it could be just a touch darker though. So I'm going to put just a little more paint on. When I say a little, I really do mean a little though. We're not going to overdo it because I can always go darker, but it's hard to erase with paint. Now I can justifiably say that is darker. I'm going to go to my last one now, which means I've got quite a bit of paint in my paintbrush and not a lot of water. It's more of what we'd call a dry brush. See how much more even that is? Not a lot of water. All right, very important to turn your paper. I like to remind you of that frequently. So I'm going to turn the paper, fill it in, and then I'm going to move on to my rectangle, and I'm going to finish this last box over here. All right, that may not be dark enough, so I can add a little bit more, and I'm going to fill this in. All right, so that is the end of the